Welcome to The Art Box, your podcast dedicated to exploring the vibrant art scene in Nevada and beyond. Join us as we embark on a journey through galleries, theaters, studios, public lands, and streetscapes, meeting the artists, curators, archaeologists, nature lovers, and cultural influencers who shape our creative community and our world. Whether you're looking for your next cultural adventure, seeking inspiration for your own artistic pursuits, or simply curious about the world of art, tune into The Art Box. Together, let's open up a world of creativity and imagination. Let's dive in.
Dreams, what if the night is about you and me? So lift your head up to the sky.
Hey, this is Steve from The Art Box. Today we are in Scottsdale, Arizona for a conversation with Laura Hales, who is the curator at Scottsdale Center for Performing Arts. Linda is on a family trip back to Missouri, so it's just me, but our friend and one-time guest, Jen Urso, has agreed to come over from Phoenix to Scottsdale to help us with this conversation. Laura is a curator for Art RX, the Mind-Body Connection exhibition at the Center Space Gallery, which is inside the Scottsdale Center for Performing Arts. Brains and Beauty is based on the concept of neurological responses to aesthetic experience. So Art RX is specifically about how arts engagement is used in medicine to help people feel better. Laura has also managed Memory Lounge, an arts-based program for people with mild to moderate memory loss and their care partners, for 8 years. She first learned about the connection between art and healing through the Memory Lounge, where she saw it firsthand. Caregivers have said that their partners look forward to the Memory Lounge program and that it's something they really enjoy. It lightens the mood for both caregiver and loved one. It's also a very social environment where people get to meet others who are in similar situations. Here's Steve from The Art Box. And we are with Laura Hales and Jen Urso here, who is my favorite guest ever. So, Laura, hi. Thank you for inviting us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming out. Appreciate it.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, let's see. I've been working here as a curator of education for 16 years. And it's actually my second career. I was an architectural illustrator for a while. And it was funny. It got to the point where all of my clients were using illustrators who were using CAD. So I had the choice of going back to school, learning about computers. They were very expensive at that time to do that, or taking a shift in my career, which I was ready for because my bachelor's degree was in fine arts, and I just really loved the fine arts and was missing that. So I went back to school and got a graduate degree in art education, specifically museum education, and was very fortunate a couple of years after I graduated to land a job here. So I've been here ever since and have loved it. But this is my first exhibition in the museum. I do exhibitions in a gallery space that we have here, but it was really a pleasure to be able to curate an exhibition for the museum space.
I'll bet somewhere I heard that architecture, I think it was an architect told me, it is the oldest art.
I can't believe that.
I don't know. I went right to cave
art.
Paintings too. Yeah. If you consider caves as architecture, then possibly.
Yeah, that's true. But they didn't design the caves.
Yeah.
Tell us about young Laura. Were you, your elementary school art, was it hanging on the refrigerator? And did your parents encourage you?
Well, that's what I always did. That was my pastime, is drawing all the time. Always had paper around the house, always creating something, doing, any kind of art competitions that were around. I would try to do them. Kind of known around the school as the kid who's good at art, that kind of thing. However, as far as, I don't know whether I was encouraged by my parents. I think they thought it was sort of a fool's errand and that I would grow out of it. That only made me more determined, actually, to make some kind of a career out of it. So
Was there any friction with your family about going into fine arts, or was it just do whatever you need to do?
There was no friction about it. They, looking back, I'm really surprised at that I didn't get more direction or guidance. I think parents these days are more focused on their kids' the colleges that they go to and the diplomas that they get. Well, but back then it was just like hands-off parenting, pretty much.
Yeah, laissez-faire. That's what we call it, laissez-faire.
But I did get a few like, what are you going to do with that? Questions. But that was kind of the extent of it.
So they kind of know that that's probably what you were going to get into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you take drafting then?
Actually, no. The architectural illustration came about really surreptitiously. I was working at an art supply store. Speaking of not being able to do much with my degree, first job out of college, I saw a job ad for Continental Homes, which was a big home developer here at the time. And they were looking for an architectural illustrator, and so I called the number, and it was an employment agency, and they said, put together a portfolio, we'll get you an interview next week. And so I just put together the quickest portfolio you've ever seen, just drew a bunch of houses.
So you actively went out and drew specifically for that, for that.
Yes,
just for
just for that interview, and it was amazingly I was hired. And then I learned how to do it the right way, how to draft the homes, from the blueprints, and there is a system that you go through with the perspective and all of that to get it just right. So I learned that after I got my job there. So it was just really...
on the job. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah. But that turned into a nice gig because I was, I had my daughter a little bit later, and so I could stay home and work, and it was pretty lucrative.
You work from home?
Yeah.
Wow.
Back in the day.
Before your time.
Yeah. I follow in the footsteps with my mother, who also worked at home
Really?
as a court transcriber. So, yeah.
So when you said this was the first time you did a show, like curating a show,
right.
So how did that come about? Was it something that you brought to them, or they introduced the idea?
Yeah, the director of the museum at the time, Jennifer McCabe, asked me to put in a proposal. She and my supervisor were talking, and like I say, I've been doing a lot of exhibitions in this gallery space, and Jennifer was thinking that she would like to have an exhibition maybe of mine. So
and you're speaking of the space down here.
Yeah.
What's that called?
Center Space.
Center Space. Okay.
And so I put together a proposal of this idea I had about neuroaesthetics. My exhibitions, because I'm a curator of education, tend to be largely educational, which, I know all exhibitions are educational. I don't want to take that away from curators of exhibitions because they're very educational as well. But what I mean by that is that the exhibition really isn't about the artwork. It's more the artwork is illustrating what I'm trying to say about the idea, or in this case, the research, explaining neuroaesthetics, and what is being researched now by scientists.
Addie, the art box is down under research assistant, jumping in for a bit of my research on neuroaesthetics. Neuroaesthetics is a field of study that explores the connection between neuroscience and aesthetics. It seeks to understand how the brain perceives, processes, and responds to beauty, art, and creative experiences. This interdisciplinary area combines principles from neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, and the arts to uncover the biological and cognitive mechanisms underlying aesthetic experiences. Key areas of neuroaesthetics. Perception of beauty investigates how different forms of beauty, visual, auditory, or conceptual, are recognized and valued by the brain. Emotional response to art studies the neural basis of emotional reactions to various art forms, such as music, paintings, or dance. Creativity and artistic expression examines brain regions and neural networks involved in creating art and the subjective experience of creativity. Cultural and individual differences looks at how personal experiences, cultural background, and psychological traits influence aesthetic preferences. Therapeutic applications explores how art and beauty can affect mental health, stress levels, and overall well-being. Methods used in neuroaesthetics. Neuroimaging techniques like fMRI and EEG are used to map brain activity during aesthetic experiences. Psychological experiments, behavioral studies measure reactions to different artistic stimuli. Comparative analysis studies how art and aesthetics are processed differently across cultures and age groups. This field not only enhances our understanding of the human mind, but also has practical applications in education, therapy, design, and even marketing by leveraging how humans respond to beauty and creativity. Wow, Jen and Steve, I am sure excited to continue listening to this interview with Laura. Addie, over and out.
So I proposed this idea. I wasn't sure if it was going to go because of that component, but I got Johns Hopkins involved. I called them, and they have an Arts and Minds lab, and talked to them, and they were interested in working on it with me to really validate the science part of it, and was working with them just a short time before COVID hit. And then they had such a small staff that they backed out because they said they just couldn't do it anymore. But they said, you might ask Anjan Chatterjee, who's the director of the Penn Center for Neuroaesthetics. And he really has written most of the research, a lot of the research in neuroaesthetics. If he didn't write the research, he is cited in it. He's really the father of neuroaesthetics. So it was really, I didn't know that he would agree to do this, but he did, and was just thrilled. So I went ahead and proceeded with Dr. Chatterjee, and we had Zoom calls every month, and I had an hour of his time every month. So that was just really fabulous. The learning curve was high for me, obviously, but he's an educator as well as a scientist, so he's able to talk about his research in layman's terms it's easy to understand. And it was really a fantastic experience and a wonderful partnership.
What made you interested in the neuroaesthetics in the first place?
Well, being a museum educator, I've always been interested in why do different people look at art in different ways, and why does one piece not interest somebody, but another person could come up and stare at it for half an hour. I've actually done exhibitions before in center space, one called Viewpoints, which is the theories of Dr. Mary Erickson, who's faculty emeritus at ASU in art education. Her theories, the Viewpoints theory, is about the stages of how people look at art, and they don't necessarily go in order, but very often they do. So the first stage is just basically that knee-jerk reaction that you have, or something that a little kid would say, "Oh, I like it, it's yellow," without any reason. And then it kind of goes up from there until you're talking about multiple art worlds and different cultures, and that's something that maybe only a curator can hit, or somebody with expertise. And then there's this range in between. And then when I found out that I just was researching about this and learned about this science field that's emerging, and they're asking some of the same questions that museum education is asking. And they're getting hard data that's validating what museum education has been saying for decades, right? So I was really very interested in pursuing that and learning more. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that, hey, this could be an exhibition. So.
What kind of things did you find that they were doing in order to get hard data? Like, how do you get hard data about, like, the experience of looking at artwork?
It is. You're not going to believe this, but this is the way they started to do this, and technology is changing now, so it's getting to be better. But the way they started was with fMRI studies, which is that tube that you go into, and they projected art on the top of the tube. And so they would show different artworks to people and record what was going on in their brain when they were looking at it. Now, is that an ideal aesthetic experience sitting in an MRI tube? Absolutely not. But they conducted the study with enough people to get generalizations and to be able to reach some kind of conclusion, even though it's not, I wouldn't say it's just absolute. But now there's more technology that they're using, like eye tracking equipment, and they're able to actually analyze the brain in place when you're actually sitting somewhere, and like in a museum setting. So they're getting, actually I should say they're getting closer to being able to do that, and that's what they're aiming for. A lot of the studies are based on that fMRI. Those old studies.
When you were looking for artists and artwork to include, did you find any artists that were using that same kind of technology of experiencing the artwork in their artwork themselves? Like the eye tracking and that kind of...
No, none of these artists are scientists, really. And there were a couple of artists that came close. Mark Pomilio actually uses mathematical equations to direct the process of his work. So he translates numerical solutions into form and shape. And Monica Martinez is, she creates a lot of work that has to do with human anatomy, and she studies this, and she partners with scientists a lot. And so what's interesting about the work that she has in my exhibition, it's of the inside of the brain, and it depicts something called the default mode network. But the default mode network is a very creative state of mind to be in, the most creative state of mind. And what's interesting is Monica said that she entered the default mode network and she was thinking about that while she was creating it. So it is a piece about something that the artist was actually in that state of mind while creating.
What is the default mode network?
The default mode network is always activated. It means you're alive, basically, but it's highly activated when you're thinking internal thoughts, like your memories, your daydreaming. It's that wayward mind. If you're asked to do a task, it dims, so that because that switches from inward to outward world. You're thinking about the outside world. And then science has found that creativity increases the default mode network even more than if you're just thinking about, daydreams. When you're creative, when you're in that state of, creating art or looking creatively at a piece of art, or you're looking at a piece of art that challenges you, especially if you relate well to it, so it's more that inward thinking, that actually increases your default mode network higher. Than if you were just thinking about your memories. So I think that that's a very interesting thing to talk about, especially in a museum and to a bunch of artists, because that's something that they've discovered.
Yeah.
The people stand in front of a piece of beautiful art, and I'm not saying yours isn't beautiful, but yours makes me think, so I have to stand in front of yours longer. Okay, but if I see a landscape that's beautiful, and I say it's beautiful, and I'm there for 10 seconds, but then I go to Monica's, and I'm there for 5 minutes.
Is that kind of like the stages of awareness thing you were talking about? This
is actually, you really hit on the framework that Dr. Chatterjee uses to talk about he calls it the aesthetic triad, and these are the three major brain systems that interact during an aesthetic experience. The aesthetic triad is composed of the sensory motor system, the emotion valuation system, and the knowledge meaning system. So what Steve was talking about was the difference between the sensory motor and the knowledge meaning. If you're looking at a beautiful landscape, you're just reacting to what you're seeing. You're not reacting to anything else. And we're hardwired to appreciate landscapes, first of all, because that has to do with we evolve that way, to see a beautiful landscape and to appreciate that means you're going to survive because you're in a healthy place to live. But when you look at Monica's and learn about the default mode network, that's more of a knowledge meaning piece. And the other things play into it, the sensory motor. I mean, you're looking at the beauty of the piece and the line work and then the emotion valuation. It could cause an emotional reaction to you, especially if, you've had some kind of issue with your brain at one time, or you have a loved one who has a brain tumor, or something like that triggers this self-awareness. So all three systems play together. But for the sake of this exhibition, I organized the galleries into the three systems and chose artwork that I think very strongly suggests each of these systems. So the first gallery is all about the sensory motor system, and the second gallery is about emotion evaluation, and then the second half of the second gallery is about knowledge meaning.
Yeah, I mean, as a maker, like I've always thought of, conceptual artwork sometimes can tend to be a little bit too conceptual to the point where there's no access point for the audience, and so there's a lot of explaining from the conceptual artist. But then I always felt like no matter what you're doing, there has to be some kind of aesthetic to it, because you need to have something that draws people in the first place. So you're I guess it's tapping into the sensory motor and then the knowledge meaning.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Sensory motor or emotion evaluation or both. There's also the issue that an idea can be beautiful, and the fact that scientists are embracing that idea now is really refreshing for me, because they originally started their research just with modern art, art for art's sake, and beautiful art, but looking through Western eyes, right? And they hit a wall because they weren't talking to artists. And so now they've branched out, and everybody's talking to each other. They realize that there's, that art has continued and there are different ideas. And I think we have a contemporary art museum, and this is where we lose patronage, is people come in who don't have prior knowledge about the artist or the context. It just loses them because there's nothing to hold their attention. The knowledge meaning system is the only one of the three systems that requires you to know something, either prior knowledge or read the label or even read the title, something to give you more of a clue as to what's going on. Because when you can decipher that, artists leave clues in their work, even in the most conceptual piece. There are clues there. And when you can decipher that and understand what they're saying, it triggers an aesthetic experience as well.
Did you feel that there were works in the show that you selected that kind of tapped into all three of those areas, like really successfully? And which were those, if they were?
Yeah, since I was so focused on just doing one at a time, I wasn't really... Well, Refik Anadol's pieces, I'll just use those as an example. There are two of his pieces in the exhibition, and he uses AI, artificial intelligence, as an art medium. His first piece, I'll just talk about that one, is Quantum Memories Nature Studies, and it's a video that it shows you a landscape, but it's not actually a landscape because he got permission from Google to use millions of photographs that were saved online by people from vacations or whatever. And so there's these landscapes that morph into each other. And so what you're actually seeing are the hints of a landscape. You see sometimes a horizon line and a sky and sometimes water or the ground, but it's all changing and nothing about it is a real landscape. And he calls these collective memories. So it really is beautiful looking at it because we do have, and I think most people find it beautiful because we have this built-in, like I was just talking about, preference for landscapes. The idea behind the collective memories of using images that were created by people all over the world to bring together for one kind of a memory that we all have.
Emotional pull to it.
Exactly, and you might recognize some of the landscape forms as something that you're familiar with that could have this emotional pull. So I think that is.
And then when you know a little bit more about what he's doing, then that adds this other layer to it.
Exactly, yeah.
Like I feel Janae's piece, of her skin kind of being pierced by the cactus. The photo itself is really beautiful. And alluring, so you have that brings you in, and then there's that visceral kind of feeling of like what that feels like, but then you start to understand more about her body, as a woman who grew up on the border in the landscape, interacting with so I feel like hers operates on all these different levels, that makes it so successful. And you could say it's just a photograph, but it's like there's a lot more happening in there.
And that's what I'm hoping that this exhibition will have a lasting effect on people as a different way to look at art. Because looking at art that way, like what three parts or which parts of the aesthetic triad are working in this piece for me? Because art does that. Art does all three of those things. And when you can find all three of those things in your aesthetic experience, it's kind of engaging to be able to sit and ponder that for a while and be able to come up with those. When you can kind of see how your own brain is responding to art, it's kind of satisfying.
Is there any part of you that feels like something of the magic of or the spirituality of engaging with artwork is a little bit lost by like knowing all these scientific and experimental components of what's going on, like it kind of you don't want to know that all that stuff's happening.
There's a lot of specific stuff that's happening in the gallery. We have we partnered with Barrow Neurological Institute, and they did custom animations of the brain, like a glass brain that's spinning around, showing the exact locations that are activated when you look at specific artworks. I don't think about that, when I look at an art. I mean, I know that if I dig deeper and pay more attention to that, I can find it. But no, I don't think that knowing about the aesthetic triad damages any spontaneity for me. It's just because that's what you do anyway when you look at artwork. This just sort of defines it. It's kind of parsing out what people naturally do and defining it and just letting you know that there's a science that's behind it. And
it kind of reminds me of, there's this theory going around about how everything is predetermined. Like our brains are sort of these computers that just sort of like blurt out, and like we have no free will is kind of what it's suggesting. Yeah. Like the more we find out about how the brain processes, the less we believe that we're actually making decisions about things. And it just seems like very depressing to me.
Well, actually, there's a couple pieces in the show that kind of talk about that. But it's the opposite. It's like knowing that our brain has certain tendencies that might be not exactly ethical. We can think about that and educate ourselves to do better. Because if we don't think about it, we can go through life just not being as kind to people as we should be. The pieces that I'm referencing are by Chris Rush. Anjan Chatterjee did a lot of research about why humans have a tendency to treat people differently based on their appearance. They found that when you look at people who have physical anomalies that don't live up to your ideal of beauty, the part of your brain that's responsible for attention really is activated highly. So that can cause you to stare at someone, and also the part of your brain that's responsible for empathy is dimmed. So that combination makes you less kind, less respectful,
compassionate,
and compassionate. So knowing this, people can say, oh, my brain kind of does that automatically. I'm going to, that's wrong. I know that, and I'm going to change. And you can absolutely change the way that your brain thinks just by thinking about it.
Yeah,
So.
It seems like similar effects to like once you started to meditate, like understanding that you have this chatter happening, that you don't have to like feed into the chatter, you can, kind of let it pass. So like once you have an understanding of that process going on, you can sort of do something or react differently or something like that.
We can engage with our brains and change the ways we think, and we do. That's what life is, and everybody's life experience changes. Your brain's changing daily by things that you see, and artwork. Just viewing artwork can change your brain, and I think that in itself is interesting.
So what do you think, like, were there like formative pieces that you witnessed maybe when you were in college or at a younger age or something that you saw that really resonated with you, that made you sort of going in a certain direction with your aesthetic self or with your art interest? Like,
that's a good question. I think one of the most powerful exhibitions I've ever been to was a retrospective of James Turrell at LACMA. We did have a James Turrell exhibition here at this space, before that. But his artwork always interested me because of the concept that he's really, the materiality is basically nothing. It's light, it's air, it's and it absolutely, for me, I had very strong aesthetic experiences, responding to his pieces. I also remember walking through Richard Serra large sculptures and just feeling completely surrounded and feeling very small in comparison, and that feeling of it's a feeling of awe, really, that where you feel smaller than and less significant, just by being surrounded by something so huge and beautiful, that I really respond to.
Yeah, and I can see the connection between that and the neuroaesthetics, because Turrell's pieces are so you don't even have like a library in your mind of how to address this experience that you're having, other than one that takes place in nature, like with a sunset or with experiencing like the vastness of a landscape. Like I feel like his pieces sort of generate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too.
Addie, breaking in again to add a little research on James Turrell. Born on May 6, 1943, in Los Angeles, California, he is an American artist renowned for his explorations of light and space. A pivotal figure in the light and space movement, his work focuses on the perception of light and its interaction with architectural spaces. His most ambitious project is the Rodin Crater, a dormant volcanic cinder cone near Flagstaff, Arizona. Since the 1970s, he has been transforming this natural formation into a monumental observatory designed for experiencing celestial phenomena. The project integrates art, architecture, and astronomy, offering visitors a unique engagement with light and space. In addition to the Rodin Crater, Tyrrell has created numerous sky spaces, worldwide, enclosed chambers with apertures open to the sky, facilitating contemplative experiences of light and color. These installations exemplify his commitment to altering perception through controlled light environments. His contributions to art have been recognized with several honors, including a MacArthur Fellowship in 1984 and the National Medal of Arts in 2014. His work continues to challenge and expand the boundaries of human perception, inviting viewers to experience light as a tangible presence. I am loving this discussion, Jen and Laura. Addie, over and out.
So, well, right now we've been talking about looking at a piece of art, okay, but there is music that adds to it. There's smell, there's sound. Where does that fit in?
Oh my gosh, well, neuroaesthetics is the science of the biology, of what happens biologically when we see something that we see or hear or experience something that we find beautiful. And that can be a lot of things. That can be the people, places, and things that we live with. And music is part of that. Obviously, there's a whole field of neuroaesthetics that's based on music. And you can really take a deep dive in that if you're interested. That would be something that I couldn't address in this exhibition. I just stuck with visual art. But yeah, looking at nature, people, architecture, just there are all kinds of things. It's just whatever you find beautiful. And that's just part of what neuroaesthetics is.
I had a conversation with Deanne at the barrack, and we talked about smell. Okay, and how could you ever introduce smell into an art exhibit?
We
There's
actually
definitely
did
artists
once.
who have done that. I'm trying to think of
The artist who uses the stockings and fills the stockings with like cinnamon and different spices.
Yeah,
And
installation I saw in Seattle. I'm blanking on the artist's name, but she's known for doing these really immersive installations that kind of tap into a lot of different senses, and the smell of it was pretty incredible. But I think there's definitely a lot of artists who utilize that as a way to kind of, especially with installation work.
Yeah, we did have an exhibition here once that was about that, and each gallery had artwork that was about one of the senses, and it was called the Five Senses.
Oh,
so
really?
there was there was artwork that had to do with scent, and one of them was a piece that I wish I could remember the artist's name. I feel so silly.
Who's the artist that did the big beeswax, honey? I remember I was working as a security guard here.
Wolfgang Leib?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was like you had this real rich smell.
That
when you
was
came into
incredible,
the space.
wasn't it? Yeah, I remember that exhibition, and it sticks with you. When you have when you're experiencing all of your senses like that, it creates a memory, and it really sticks with you for a long time. Yeah, he had a whole room that was made of beeswax that you walk through, and then he did that wonderful installation with all the bees' pollen. Yeah, just that pile of pollen on the floor that was really lovely.
It's a lot of bee work.
Yeah,
word up to the.
Now, one of the things you said, art engagement is used in medicine to help people feel better. And I was looking, is there a practical use? Okay. And I know in a police station, the interrogation rooms, they have pastel paint.
How do you know about that?
I read about this. They have pastel rooms that will
put people at ease.
But is there any? I know what you're doing here, and that's right. Is there any practical use?
Absolutely, there's a lot of practical.
And this is seeing it's not practical.
Yeah,
but
and this is one of the fields that I was As I mentioned earlier, that artists have been saying certain things for years, and now science has some data to back it up. This is one of those things because think about music therapy or art therapy. We've been doing this for a long time. And just recently, over the past 20 years where this research has been going on, now we have data that what is happening in the brain when you are creating things and how that is good for people and how it lowers cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone, and it increases your serotonin, which is helps you relax. Particularly with people with neurodegenerative problems or people who've experienced trauma or depression, art is extremely helpful. And we're approaching a time when this country will start doing social prescribing. That's something I'm very excited about because neurologists or doctors will recommend arts engagement for their patients as part of their health plan. Personally, Scottsdale Arts is working with Honor Health right now and hopefully we'll get this underway, but it's a slow process to get going. But it's very common in England and in other countries in Europe. So we're just hoping to get it going. It's just only in a couple places in the United States right now. And it's prevalent in Canada as well.
Is it really?
I actually, in the other gallery that I have over here in Center Space, there's an exhibition right now that I did called Art RX, and it's about that. And because I felt like I needed to carve a special place for how art is being used in medicine because it's really a huge implication for neuroaesthetics. It covers, kind of how, the different disciplines in art help different kinds of issues like poetry and creative writing and how that is used for grief therapy and so forth. And there's visual art that's really potent for people who've had trauma, like vets. They say that in the book, Your Brain on Art, which I looked at a lot for this particular exhibition, she said that if you start somebody just drawing a lot right after they experience trauma, it reduces a diagnosis of PTSD by 80%. So, they're finding that kind of thing out. So it really is. And then dance for Parkinson's is huge, and they're finding that exercise is good for any kind of movement disorder, but specifically dance is the best thing that you can do because it's synchronized and it's sort of helps you with your motor control in a special way.
So you're coming from this sort of formulaic way of doing architectural drawings, and then you start to go into education. And I feel like you don't go into education without wanting to sort of help people in a way. I think like you have to have that desire. So was there an event that happened, or was there something that made you want to kind of veer in that direction? Well,
to be honest with you, I just have always loved art museums, and I wanted to work in one. And I felt at the time that having an education role spoke to me the most, so that's what I pursued. But what happened when I got here is they asked me to do a program for people with memory loss and their care partners. And it was a pilot program that was being launched here and at Phoenix Art Museum and at Phoenix Symphony also, called Arts Engagement. I saw the impact that it made on these folks. And at the same time, my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's. So I had that issue going on in my personal life as well. And I think it grew from that. And then subsequently, my husband had a stroke. My mom has Alzheimer's. I became very interested in what was going on in the brain, just from these personal experiences. And so it was very interesting for me to sort of link all of that together, both professional and personal, and then just for my benefit, for my learning about it. And I thought, well, maybe if it's interesting to me, it'll be interesting to somebody else.
Yeah, my sister had multiple strokes, and it was fascinating. Well, they thought she was just this anomaly, they couldn't quite figure out because there was so much weird damage to her brain that they were trying to figure out where were the deficits and where were the problems. And it was just so interesting to think about what her world was like, where she's trying to function as herself, but couldn't draw in a straight line or write in a straight line, and couldn't see things in a certain way, and it was such a mystery. And so I can imagine experiencing that with your husband and your family. It's like then you're kind of wanting to get into that more. So
yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to learn. Okay, that stroke is in the frontal temporal area, and you're having trouble talking, okay, that relates, and it's, I guess I just never really gave it a lot of serious thought before about the specific areas in your brain really do control specific things, and if they're damaged, then it
I
really
think until you experience it or have someone close to you, like, it's really not something that we give much thought to, because we think we're going to live until we die, and we're going to have hold of our faculties the whole time and be able to do all the things that we know how to do. But then you see that happening, you're like, wow, they have trouble walking up and down stairs. Like, why is that? Or how come they keep bumping into things on the left side, or whatever?
Left-sided neglect. Right, exactly.
And then to even see their treatment, like you have the occupational and the physical therapists who are like helping them, and they know enough to kind of point them in the right direction, but they don't really know. They're kind of stabbing in the dark, So because you were getting into this, was it your mother, your father, you said?
My mom.
Your mom, and then your husband, were they taking part in some of these like aesthetic or art therapy types of things that help with memory care?
Well, my mom is funny. She loves music. She's never been into visual art. I have tried, and it's just been, I feel like it's such a failure on my part. I could never get her to draw or do anything like that. And I wanted to, because she has left side neglect, and so for example, she'll eat everything on the right side of her plate and leave the left half completely and you have to turn her plate. So and so for drawing, it's really helpful for them to just say, okay, remember the left side of the paper, use your whole piece of paper, and they have to look and they have to pay attention. And I would have loved to have done more of that with her, but I just couldn't get her interested in that. And so she's but she loves music, and so that's very beneficial to her, and she really remembers the words for songs back in the 1940s and 50s. It's incredible. So that's another very interesting way that the brain works, just remembering music is that's the last thing.
I remember freaking commercials from like when I was 7 years old. It's really sad.
Yeah, they just pop up.
I'm like, why is this still taking up space in my brain? I don't need to know the Hershey Park theme anymore.
You still know that? Huh?
Yep. I could sing it if you would like.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm not going to.
Well, so that was the Memory Lounge.
Right.
You want to talk about how that worked? And was there, I find it interesting that it sounds like a healthcare provider is interested in delving into this.
Yeah. The Memory Lounge is our program that we started back in 2008, which was called Arts Engagement, kind of morphed into Memory Lounge. We made a few changes. We changed the name. At the time, we had a lounge in the museum that where we had the program, so that's where it got its name. But what it is it's for both people with memory loss and their care partners, and it's equally for both of them. They stay together throughout the hour and a half program. The concept is to introduce them to something new each time, because doing something new is beneficial to the brain, and also to create happy memories, particularly for the care partner. After someone you love gets this diagnosis, it's a lot of doctor's appointments, it's a lot of drudgery, it's a lot of worrying about the future. This is just a time for them where they can relax, have a good time. Very often they see something in their loved one that they haven't seen in a while, because art opens up those passageways that are closed when you're not creating. So I've seen people who haven't talked for 6 months start talking when they're creating.
Wow.
It's really something. I mean, those are magic moments. They don't happen very often, don't get me wrong, but it's just like when it does happen, it's like, wow, amazing. Each workshop has a different artist who comes, and it could be a visual artist, dance, music, theater. Improv is especially wonderful for people with memory loss, and so we do that a lot. And so they never know what they're going to get when they come. I like to surprise them, and so we have a workshop. We look at art as well, and so it's a really nice time. People seem to really enjoy it.
Now, is that prescribed to someone, or is it just offered?
That's what we're hoping in the near future that it will be. Right now, where it is, it's recommended, and we're on Honor Health's newsletter, and so we're partnering. We also do one of the memory lounges at their facility at the Bob Bove Neuroscience Institute, one each month, and then one here each month. So it's sort of like acting like a bridge to bring more people in, because they are helping us by recruiting some of their patients.
Do the artists themselves kind of have an overview or know what they're dealing with when they come in? Because I would think, it's kind of hard to teach something if you're not quite sure where the person's at that you're teaching, what their capabilities are, or what they understand.
Yeah, I try not to make it too therapeutic or, prescribed that way. I just ask the artist to come in and perform a workshop like they would any adult workshop, but just with the caveats that usually step-by-step instructions are best, where we get everybody doing the first step and then the second step together. Or if it's the kind of thing where people just can intuitively engage in and there's not really a how-to. Yeah, I find that works fine, and also remember they have their care partner with them. And we also staff it enough so that we can help people who are maybe struggling with the directions. We can help them out so the care partner doesn't have to worry about their partner. They can just focus on their own work.
Do you ever find the care partner getting way more enthusiastic about it than the person who's being brought there to
enthusiastic about the project?
Yeah.
Actually, it's it's for people with mild to moderate memory loss. We're not.
That might be me.
Yeah. we're not.
You don't know anything yet.
That's just perimenopause.
Yeah.
Where am I? What are we doing? Sorry, that's a joke.
It's interesting. Our art gallery is actually doing some of this. They're just going to some of the care facilities now and doing some art training.
Well, arts and wellness is really growing. There's something called the Neuroarts Blueprint that has just been published, and that's creating it's creating a community of people who are involved in offering arts engagement solutions for people with medical issues and also medical providers. And so now you can get on the web and find others who have your same interests in this area, and you can collaborate with them, you can do research with them, and then publish something that also gets put on the Neuroarts Blueprint. And so it's this growing system, or network that has just been published, and that was done by the Johns Hopkins Arts and Mind Lab as well.
Do you have any plans to do like another project in the future, kind of along these same lines? I mean, obviously not the same thing, but maybe like what would the next step be? Or is there something that you didn't get to do with this that you kind of want to do later on?
One thing I'm curious about is synesthesia. And, that's when your brain processes different senses and kind of gets them mixed up so that you might smell a sound, or you might think a tone has color, or numbers have colors, this kind of thing. And I was talking to one artist recently who has synesthesia, and that really prompted me to look into it a little bit more closely. So now I'm kind of on the hunt. Maybe this is a good place to say it. I would love to get a couple more artists who have synesthesia. I would love to do an exhibition of their work, and then also maybe include a musician, sort of delve into that area.
Yeah, I can imagine that being like very multimedia, because they're already thinking in kind of multimedia.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of always wish that I could have been a synesthetic. Like, seems kind of cool.
Yeah.
So like being colorblind seems kind of cool to me too.
And it's interesting because I told you how my family has sort of prompted me in these interests. And my daughter has synesthesia, and she's a pianist, so she sees color in music, and so when she plays, she sees these splashes of color, and there's each signature, tone signature has a specific color, and it never changes.
When did she just kind of like mention it one day, and you were like, wait, what?
Yeah. When she was about 20 or something, and she actually read about it and said, I thought everybody had this.
Oh, of course she would think everybody had that.
Yeah, this is just how we live.
I'm jealous now.
See?
Wow.
I can taste color.
You can taste color,
And then I can hear sound.
Oh, you just want to be in the exhibition, Monica? You're just saying
No.
She's putting her foot in.
But I can see sound, and some music has been really bothersome to me. It overwhelms me. If I see
What
it
do you
live.
see? What do you see?
I saw Kandinsky's images surface, triangles, colors. The music was really quick and fast, and then all these colors started surfacing and shapes, and I had to leave because I was overstimulated. And I just went out and took a break and then came back.
Okay,
But I
fantastic.
don't paint that way. But I
Now we
couldn't-
have two.
I couldn't stay quiet. I couldn't stay quiet. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, do you want to tell us about your next exhibition that I'm in?
Of course.
Very
or
good.
two later that you're in.
Yeah, exactly. The forthcoming synesthesia featuring Monica
Yes.
Aissa Martinez.
Yeah, my next exhibition doesn't really follow these lines. I'm, taking a little bit of a diversion because, and I got this idea because our museum is going to have an exhibition called Transfeminisms. So I thought it would be interesting to have a partner exhibition in the center space. It is called There's No Planet B, Ecofeminism and Climate. And so this is an exhibition of artists who explore themes of climate and justice and feminism. And I'm very excited about this. It has it's a multimedia exhibition. I think, has some extremely strong work in it. It's very thought-provoking. And yes, Jen Urso is
And you're
front and center.
co-curating with Patricia Watts, right?
Thank you. Yes, I'm curating with Patricia Watts, and she really is the lead curator on this. She's been doing, she has a group called the Eco Art Space. She's done this for many, many years, and it's a collection of artists who all kind of work in this vein, and she supports them with exhibitions and with information and with classes. And so I really admire her.
webinars.
She's amazing. She's
Yeah.
really amazing. And so it's really a great opportunity for me to work with her.
As a curator, where do you get your ideas?
Well, all over the place.
And I assume they're years in advance.
Where do you get your ideas? Steve?
Yeah. And Jen, where do you get your ideas?
Just sort of come out, riding the bus, looking out the window.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where do we get ideas? There is no where.
I get a lot of ideas from the Arizona-based artists who I work with mostly.
Yeah.
I might see something in somebody's work that sparks something, and then I think, hey, that could be combined with this person's, and and then it tells a story and so forth. But
I see a thread kind of going from what you were talking about, your kind of beginnings into this, like just being interested in how we think about things, why we do things, how we do it,
yeah, I've always kind of been interested in sort of the metacognitive
Yeah.
stuff, so maybe that's it.
And the way, I heard your interview, I think it was with KJZZ, where, I would have mistaken you for like a research scientist, the way you were talking about the neurological processes of what was going on.
Everything I know about that, I can thank Anjan Chatterjee. He was just amazing at teaching me all of that, and the many, many books and research articles I read for this. Yeah.
What's in your book, Q?
What's in my book deal?
Q.
Oh, my book queue?
Wait, do you have a book deal?
I don't.
Oh,
it was news to me.
talk about that.
Yeah. Book queue in the sense of what am I going to read next?
What are you reading?
We won't
Time to
judge.
read.
If it's a romance novel, we're not going to judge you.
The thing about this exhibition is I had to read so much science that now I actually am taking, in my personal life, I just sort of like a break from things. And so actually the book I'm reading is about pioneering Arizona teacher back in the she was born in 1900s, it's been like the 1920s,
So this
teaching.
is nonfiction? Or?
Yeah, it's nonfiction, and it's just interesting to me because my late husband's mother-in-law or grandmother was a pioneer, and she was actually born out here in a stagecoach.
Wow.
And so my daughter's a fourth-generation Arizona native. So a friend loaned me this book, and so I've been reading that. So it's not at all related, but I'm taking a little mental break from the brain.
You have to take a break?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll ask my dumb questions. What's your go-to snack on a road trip?
Oh, Dot's pretzels.
They're pretty good. And
They're addictive.
and also pretty bad.
Yeah.
You've never had Dot's
I
pretzels?
don't even know what they are.
I'm from
I usually don't.
Pennsylvania. We
I usually don't eat much on the road, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like drink iced tea.
It's like
And last question, unless you have something else.
No, I was just going to say my son's favorite thing when we go on a road trip is buying road snacks before we get in the car. It's just become a thing now. Like we go to like Circle K or like QT, and it's like, all right, you can pick out whatever snack you want.
Oh, so you're talking about
Cheetos.
you're talking about a road trip that's measured in fewer than 10 miles.
No, like a road, like going to Tucson,
Oh, okay.
driving a distance. Like we get to go buy a bag of crappy snack foods,
Yeah, those little tiny donuts and those,
Doritos, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. What's inspired you this past week?
What's inspired me this past week?
It's an easy question for me until I'm asked it.
When you asked me, I had just done the wheat thing, so it was really easy for me to talk about harvesting wheat. But
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I think it's a hard one because you really
That
have
is
to
what-
reflect.
That is what, yeah.
You really have to sit and reflect on things. So
I'm
I'm
sorry.
filling the space so you can reflect. Reflect amongst yourself.
Well, this week I've given a couple of tours of the exhibition, and it's inspiring to hear what people say about it. And sometimes I get asked surprising questions that I've never thought of before, and so that kind of makes me think more deeply about things. So anyway, that probably is one of our gallery attendants, George, who's really great at engaging people, told me that there was a woman who was taking pictures of the whole exhibition and the labels and everything, and he's like, "Can I ask you what you're doing, and what are you taking pictures for?" And she said, "Well, I have this art school in New York, and I wanted to use these to maybe make a curriculum to teach my students about the different way of looking at, the artwork that they're making and how it, how it can impact, people's responses." And I thought, what? Really? Wonder where credit's going to go on that one.
It's great to think of like someone from New York, like this nexus of art is coming to Arizona and being like inspired to bring something back. Like, take that, New York.
Right. Thank you.
Inspired wherever you go.
Yeah, of course. But New Yorkers, as you know, are New York centered.
Yes.
And on that note,
Laura, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here.
That was fun listening. This was inspirational. You should have asked me what inspired me this week, and I would have answered right away.
Well,
this is practice for our podcast.
I know you're very good.
Thanks.
I learned a lot about you, Laura.
Oh, did you?
I keep asking you questions, and you say, "Well, there's not enough time to answer that." And so I just answered those questions. Here you are.
We're going to spend some time together pretty soon.
Yeah,
Monica and I are going to go on a trip around the billboards.
Oh,
There's
billboard
digital
around-
billboards
I
that
thought you were
have.
going to say around the world. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, no.
well, will you get a snack before you go?
Yeah,
Let's see, I
I'm
don't
bringing
know
my
what
pretzels.
pretzel thoughts are.
Broadcasting from the Mesquite Works Steam Center in the scenic Mojave Desert, the Art Box sponsors thank you for listening. You can find us on Spotify, Samsung, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, and Amazon Music. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We are on Facebook and Instagram as The Art Box. We welcome all comments. You can email us at artboxvv@gmail.com. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of its hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors.